us. We would rather take somebody who's kind and considerate and compassionate and teach them some of the technical skills or teach them some of the ways of the business than we would to take a brilliant surgical precision programmer or a technologist that can come in and just do brilliant things, but leaves a tornado path in their wake. And that's what we're trying to coach when we had our intern positions, we'd coach them on how to do business email in a tactful manner and how to word things. Always be questioning. Telling somebody how to do something isn't a way to get something done, but ask them a leading question that gives them the opportunity to give an answer is very important. I remember when I was 24 years old, I thought I knew everything. And I would bluntly say, well, that's stupid. I'm not doing that. Or that's a dumb way to do it. But there's a really good way to do it and say, I'm wondering why we aren't doing it like this. And asking the question turns the corner and opens some eyes, maybe have a better conversation. So those soft skills for us are very important. And those are the kind of people we like to hire.
How about your organization, Aloke?
Well, first of all, I would thank Judy and Len for covering a lot of the ground. I would have trouble adding more to it. Certainly soft skills, the ability to be in a team, to be with other people is very important. Some of the ways I would phrase it is asking lots of questions, and Len hinted at that too. The more questions you ask versus the more answers you give, the more valuable you are in my team. The ability to have presentation skills, which is being able to gather together your thoughts into a coherent narrative, is very important. And something we emphasize a lot these days, even if we don't call it out explicitly, is just storytelling. And storytelling is, where is this organization headed to? What's my piece in it? What I achieved recently, what exactly did it accomplish in the bigger picture? And people who are more cognizant and coherent about it tend to do better in the organization. And naturally, being inspiring as opposed to being the naysayer. And naysayer, if you're asking lots of questions, there is a way of being the person who raises the overall good by asking the difficult questions. And that's very important. But raising the bar so that the team becomes even more enthusiastic and does a higher level of work because of your presence is something that we value a lot.
Thank you. Somebody in the chat had a cybersecurity question. I know this isn't specifically, but okay, good. I see some nods that maybe we could have. Okay, so the question is, for someone looking to specialize in cybersecurity, is it realistic to get a cybersecurity job right out of college, or is going to a networking position first a better strategy?
I'd like to take that one, certainly. I used to lead the cybersecurity team at MultiCare, and I still have that alliance and liaison to that team. We clearly need more cybersecurity professionals. It's really easy to get hired right out of college. However, somebody who knows more about networking and how the network works and routing and what packets are in the networking packets, what payloads are in the packets, is going to do better for being able to decipher a security incident. However, most organizations that are willing to take a new person on or an intern on in their cybersecurity, they will train up. So if a person can come in, and Josh, strictly, addressing your question, if you know networking inside and out, and you can prove that to a job interviewer, then you will be able to get on a cybersecurity team without too much trouble. It is nice to know other things, silos like server, networking, telephony, web, and those kind of things. It's all nice to have security breadth on that, but if you can decode a packet and know the difference between TCP and UDP, you're going to get into an organization pretty easily. You may not work at the top tier at Amazon or Costco or Microsoft, but you can get on at MultiCare because we need those kind of people, and there is a high demand for that. And thanks for the question.
I would like to add to what Len says, because that is great advice. I would also say, don't forget the fundamentals. There's a lot of people who go for the nuanced stuff in cybersecurity, but exactly what Len says, that kind of having those fundamentals. If you're not aware of what the OSI model is, I mean, Riverbed's a networking company, and we're dealing with visibility packets, telemetry all the time. It's really good to have that full service background to get that capability and have that. And keep in mind, the more detailed you can get in where you want to be or where you might want to go, or your training on networking, Josh, the better off you'll be. And you can do that with some detailed, private study on your own as you're starting to look into it, get your own certifications, learn that, read white papers and stuff, and start to build those items and then test those skills as well, especially so you can prove some items. Also keep a portfolio of anything you've kind of created so that you can show that maybe if you're kind of new to it, why you have knowledge about cybersecurity, and to Len's point, then help them know where to train you up and where you might have gaps or uniqueness that you can bring to the company. But I think, it's kind of a hot area and everybody's into it. The thing is knowing who's, where the skills are and who has the skills.
Great. Aloke, did you want to add anything, or is that leave it?
I think Len and Judy did a great job.
Okay, Luke, I believe, had a question.
Yeah, I have a question. This is kind of a different type of question for Aloke, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So I'm interested in entrepreneurship in the startup world, and I want to know, in your opinion, has artificial intelligence and the emergence of that industry becoming what it is now, has that changed the ability? Has it made it easier? Has it lowered the bar for startups to come in, for people who have good ideas to implement things using AI that they would not have had the ability to do before? Could you speak to that a little bit?
That's an excellent question. In terms of what startups do versus large corporations, a useful way of thinking about it is the startup universe is where new ideas are commercialized and validated. But in terms of building up a business and actually making money is where the big corporations come in. So one of the dance for startups is you always have to think about, am I really executing on a business model, or am I looking for a business model? And if it turns out that you're executing on a business model, you're actually not a startup anymore. So the role of startups is, in fact, to experiment with new ways of doing things and push the envelope. So that's a kind of a general statement, but I'll give you a specific example. We all know of Tesla these days. They have been commercializing electric cars. But at this point, Tesla is a corporation. And recently, when they were looking for battery technology, they went and bought Maxwell Technology, which was an emerging company. It had been around for a while, but they had a newer technology, and Tesla pulled them in and started commercializing them. And again, with respect to AI, I happen to know some people who are commercializing the next generation of vision algorithms. And their big hope is to sell it to Tesla. Of course, Tesla has to give them a call first. It's very one-sided. So I don't know if I answered your question, but the startup world is designed to work on the edges of new technology and push the envelope by applying the latest technologies.
Thank you.
I just want to add to that, Luke, that keep in mind that, I mean, I worked for startups for, I was employee number 6. Great place to learn because you don't get caught into your role, learn everything you can. But I would also say that a lot of large corporations are having what they call incubation or innovation teams. And so that you might find a startup mentality or a startup approach, even in large corporations. So if you want to go small or startup or something, first of all, get ready to, roll up those sleeves and make everything happen. But as for the large corporations, they'll be looking for some specialty areas. So I just want to make sure that people understand that there could be a startup mentality in a lot of areas.
Great, thank you.
So, great. I was just about to ask another question, but somebody came up with one. Okay. Okay. I just started with the ITAM Flexit program specializing in administrative management. And I was wondering, what is your recommendation on getting experience and certifications that I can start now to be set for when I graduate?
I would just say right now is like the ultimate time to take advantage of this. First of all, because of COVID, all events, all trade shows and so on are basically not charging any fees. So you can really go and get a lot of training, exposure, different areas that you can go to. A lot of areas, Microsoft Azure and AWS and different companies are also offering a lot of online classes because they want people to not lose connection to the technology right now. So you have lots of areas to do that and lots of ways to take advantage of it. Use your student status to get those student prices for those tests and so on. And then again, following where you're at. So if you're like Josh, who's interested in cybersecurity and networking, there's a lot of stuff that you can do in those areas and take those classes. But Mark, if you're thinking about different areas, start at that generalizing piece. Again, look at all the companies, there's Cisco has these programs, they all do, and just look available. Just type in, where can I get, different technology certifications, and you will be inundated. I think on what's most useful is what is of interest to you. Again, if you are not meant to be an analyst and you're forcing yourself to be an analyst, then you're not listening to your true self. If you enjoy soldering and building things, then go to build appliances. There's no right or wrong job. It's the job that you feel like you can best excel at. So that's my thoughts on that.
And Judy, that's why I'm not a math major, for that same reason. So Mark, one of the things I would like to say is that I'm not a huge fan of initials after a name. And I'll qualify why. If you can be a Microsoft certified server, whatever certification, you could be a Cisco network certified whatever. That's great. That may get you a resume look. However, I've met people who are certified with 5 different Microsoft certifications, and they didn't know how to add a new user to an AD server. So if you're going to get the certifications, make sure you have a playground, make sure you have a home network, make sure you have some place where you can practice those skills, because it would be very disappointing to get certified in Linux and Red Hat inside and out, but the first question is, how do you create a new user, and you don't know the practical aspects of that certification. So you may have a line of the letters behind your name. Make sure you can support that with actual work effort that shows you can actually fight your way out of the paper bag. So that's a little advice there, is whatever your passion is, like Judy said, follow it. Make sure you follow through so that you know the ins and outs of whatever those letters mean after your name.
And I'll follow on that and re-emphasize the notion of storytelling, which is that you could have all the certifications in the world, but being able to tell a story of a particular project, like Len said, a particular incident where you beat Linux into submission, is a lot more valuable than having certification. Now, certifications are great for getting the door kicked open, but subsequently walking through the door, your own ability to craft the narrative is what matters the most.
Thanks. I'm going to pull another question from the ITAM graduate students. And this student asked, what is the most challenging part of an IT-centered role? And I'm just going to add to it, and how can a new graduate prepare for a problem like this?
There's so many different roles. A lot of them are on-call roles, if you're talking about, because you did say IT center, right, Merity?
Yes.
So, I was a director of IT for Zurich Insurance, ran all their, mainframe systems and all their telephony systems. And we have 24-hour call and claims operations and things like that. You have a whole different life than if you have a company that only works 9 to 5. So, that is that is part of what that life is. And you have to look at how those pieces are. You also have to think about where that fits into how you are able to work. Because some people are not good on call all the time and doing those areas. And so when you're thinking about that role, again, that what is your strength and where do you feel like you can excel? I would also strongly recommend, as people are thinking about this, mentoring, exploring, reading, learning about those different roles, because these roles are changing. In COVID right now, roles and buyers and people we see today are different persons than they were maybe a year ago. So there's a lot of change going on in these areas. That's where, put that feedback.
Yeah, I think a good follow-on to that is there are challenges in IT. Even if you aren't on call, you have to often own a product, even if it is 9 to 5. I have friends who've worked for attorneys, and attorneys can be very demanding if their email isn't coming in 9 to 5. And the pressure of just that is almost the same as being on call 24 hours a day. So if you're someone like me who likes to sleep for 8 hours and enjoys that continuous sleep, even a 9 to 5 day can be kind of stressful. But we have service desk people at MultiCare that love their overnight shift because it's only 2 people, it's quiet. And when they do get a call, they get to have the care and feeding of an individual that needs help, and they're able to accomplish that and have a good self-satisfaction and self-worth. So definitely know your personality, whether you like sleep or not. Where, if you've ever had a child or a puppy, you know what it's like to be not having sleep sometimes. And that's a good measure of whether you want to be an on-call person or not in IT. But the IT part that's rewarding is seeing things accomplished and getting projects done. If you're project oriented and you can work an 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 job, then there's a place for you in IT as well.
Aloke, did you want to add to that, or should I go to the next question?
I think we could just move on. Thank you.
Sure. Also, students have any questions, but also maybe some of the faculty. And thinking of any questions you've heard students that tend to just come up again and again. Ooh, we have another one. Perfect. What future do you see for quantum computing, especially when used against current cryptography practices?
Yeah.
Cryptography.
I guess on quantum computing, I don't know if I could speak to that one practice, but quantum computing always has a place. And it also comes under many different names now. You're seeing HPC, high performance computing. You're seeing different areas of where you are looking at those pieces. I think the part about quantum computing that I think as the future is, and where you could get exposed to it, is really understanding how that is being shifted from on-premise data centers to cloud-based, flexible, agile resources. And if you have an understanding of how to be able to enact some of this compute where it's not completely in your domain and in your control of your data center, and where you can develop appropriate theories and approaches in how you are going to test your results or bring items in your design. These are going to be very important pieces, because you have to think about where that capability is going for that introspection. And Len, I think you were the one that, or maybe it was Luke, that talked about, not just the computing, but what does that data mean to you, and how would that data be used as well? So I think that that's a very important piece of where you need to be thoughtful and where you're looking at this. I mean, I think you could think about that compute, but it's also about what's going to happen with that outcome.
Yeah, I think anytime we're talking about cryptography or encryption or steganography, anything like that that requires high computation numbers, that anything to do with quantum computing or massively parallel computing is going to be an advantage to cracking those systems. From a security researcher standpoint, you want to be always ahead of that curve. And when you look at the processing power of some of the cryptography that we did in the past with these huge supercomputers that we now hold in our hand as an Android or an iPhone, times have changed. And so if you're looking at going into that, you could approach it from a couple different ways. You could be an encryption specialist, and that's a heavy math, theoretical math problem. Or you could be on the side of being able to crack those kinds of things. But if you're looking at quantum computing just to do cryptography, keep in mind there's other uses for it, and that's artificial intelligence for discovering new things that we don't know yet about data and data analytics, which goes on to the question about a job position where you'd see cybersecurity and data analytics. Basically, AI and encryption are both along those lines. I think one is more of a discovery process and the other one is more of a protective process, answering that question.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I commend you for curiosity in terms of staying one step ahead of the challenges. In terms of quantum computing, there has been a lot of interest in cryptography ever since Peter Shor published his famous paper in 1995. But that was 25 years ago. And I have seen this whole unfold firsthand. Peter Shor is my brother-in-law. I'm married to his sister. And it's taken 25 years for the first quantum computers to be constructed. And it'll take a lot longer for them to be commercialized. But like Len said, the massive infrastructure that's available right now to bad actors in the cloud, and in terms of advanced algorithms, they are a real source of worry. We are all staying up all night worrying about it. Our systems get hacked nonstop. There's a lot of job security for you in cybersecurity. Be not worried. This is a chicken, well, not chicken and egg, it's a cops and robbers kind of a game where both sides have advanced technology and staying one step ahead of it. I don't have the answers. No one has the answers. And we're looking to all of you to come into our organizations and help us get one step ahead of it.
Ooh, that sounds like an invite, doesn't it? Joseph, Gabrielle, I believe you had a question.
Hi there, yes, thank you. Just to preface things, I just wanted to thank you all for hosting us and addressing our questions today on today and future matters. I think it's really important for us as students to get your input as professionals on these things like certifications, skill set, and as well as soft skills, what we discussed earlier. And my question for you is, what do you like to see in a recent IT graduate's portfolio? How important is it to get these projects done and documented for you to see? How much do you value this?
Well, I could answer that fairly quickly. As a hiring manager, I do a quick scan of a resume, and if it's a recent graduate, it doesn't matter to me that you worked at Dairy Queen, even though I love their food. That part of the resume does not matter, but what does matter is that the courses that were taken are applicable to the job. So if you want to be a cybersecurity expert, I would like to see at least a course or two that has that word in the title. If you want to work in networking, it would be fine that you didn't take any courses in networking, but if you had a certification, that would draw attention. And certainly there is a game with human potential or human resources, whatever it may be called in an organization, to make sure that the keywords in the job description match up the keywords in your resume so it can get past that first screening. So if we are saying we're looking for a Cisco expert, throw the word Cisco in your resume so there's a match. And then after I scan for that experience, then I wonder, grade point doesn't matter to me. A lot of organizations it does, but now I'm going to look at the work ethic of where you came from and how you are as a person. And oftentimes we'll just call somebody and say, hey, I want 5 minutes of your time. I'm going to talk to you over the phone in 5 minutes. Have what we call your elevator pitch, your story about who you are and why you want to work for our organization. Have that ready. So you, in 5 minutes, you can tell me who you are as an individual, what you want to work on and what your passion is. And oftentimes you'll get past that first screen. I don't know if others feel that way, but that's where I am. Judy, how about you?
I completely agree with Len, especially about also, I mean, I hate to say it, but hiring for jobs right now is a match of buzzwords. So you do need to be thoughtful and looking for those items. I also would say, do your research. You can look up a company and say a lot of people on LinkedIn. Don't be scared to throw out that invitation. You know, worst thing is they don't accept your invitation, or they might. And then maybe you could say, great, thank you for, connecting with me. Now, what can I do next? I think those are all important pieces that you can bring forward. I would also say, if you have any samples of work, even if it might be something you did as a lab project at school or something, that can at least show how you've got a formulated approach to things. Those are also big items to bring forward as well. And then really researching the company. One thing I would say that a big mistake people make when they go into interviews is they want to talk about why this job would be good for them. Nobody wants to hear that from the big companies. They want to hear, what are you going to contribute to us? So make sure you talk about, if you start off with, I want to work when I worked at Microsoft, people would always say, oh, I really want to work at Microsoft. The benefits are so good and so on. Great. I haven't yet heard what you're going to do to make our company better. So it's got to be about your contribution, and you've got to bring that forward. So bring some proof of that, or at least interpret that. If you have no proof, then do some research. Pick a blog post on cybersecurity that was recently written by one of their technical fellows, and come up with why that was an important topic and those different pieces. And if you also don't have a question for the company, when they ask you, do you have any questions for us? Then you're also giving up your power. You should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And those are all important items. And then you also know if it's a good fit. I mean, you wouldn't date somebody and just ask what's about them and then not ask them to ask anything about you. You're spending a lot of time at these companies, more than you are with your family or anybody else. So enjoy it.
Yeah, and I'll give you a tip on a follow-on question like she's alluding to there, is that when the company's interviewing and they say, what question do you have for us? One of the good question that opens up how the work environment is at the organization is to ask, what's a typical day for me in this role at your organization? By asking that question, you will hear candid reports about how hard the job is, what the work hours are, what expectations are. Or you may not get a good answer back, and it may not be a good fit to pursue the job. You'll know it pretty quickly in a question like that.
I just Len brings up a good point. I have to tell you that when I was running IT systems, and I would get like new account executives or new people that would come in that would be supporting our corporation. If our network ever went down, it was going to be a big issue. So what I would do is sometimes even account executives or new employees or potential new employees, I would say, do you want to spend the day here and shadow me? And if you cannot, and see what this looks like, because it's so important to have a good fit. Now, most companies won't do that anymore because of all the HR requirements and liability or something, but there are maybe ways to Len's point, get in and see what a day in the life is going to be like, and understand what that demand is of you.
Yeah, thanks, Judy and Len. Great advice. I would add that if you have specific code, put it on GitHub, get it out there, write blog posts. Medium is available, LinkedIn is available. These platforms make it so easy to put the word out. And it makes it easy for us on the other side to have someone look at your work and give us a yay or nay.
Thank you for your input.
Yeah, that's great. And you actually answered a couple of the questions that were in the screen. One was about introverts, how do they start conversations with job professionals? And I think all three of you just gave some really great ideas to get those conversations started. So, okay, yeah, this is an interesting question. So somebody asked about how COVID has changed the IT's working environment. And it's talked about also, I think their question is kind of a long question, but how employers prepare for return to office scenario. So, okay, advice on must-have behavior skill sets for students who are looking for jobs in a new norm. So basically, how's COVID changed the skills that employers are looking for? I know, Len, your whole company, I believe, has really changed the structure of how how the jobs are, right? A lot of administrative offices are closed and.
Yeah, so our organization had a building called the 124 building in Tacoma, and it happened to be on Tacoma Avenue, and the number was 124, ironically. That's how they name their buildings, based on address. And the entire building was sold, or will be sold. It was vacated this last year, and everybody in that building that was IT is now work remote. And it's not necessarily work from home, but it can be work remote. And I don't think we're going to return to that. The frontline workers in the hospital system certainly are wearing their N95 masks and their face shields and gowning up and trying to protect themselves from COVID-19. And we are very grateful for their work. I am very lucky that I'm literally sitting in my home talking to you now, and I can do work, and I'm checking my phone because we had a couple of issues crop up as I'm sitting here. I don't think a lot of people will necessarily return to their offices, especially those companies that have sold theirs. I think, wasn't it REI sold their building in Bellevue? And that was a huge, wonderful building. And our little 124 building might be able to get, $30 million for it, but still it's a cost savings because we pushed the cost of IT out to people's homes. So now I'm heating my home for an extra $80 a month or whatever in the wintertime, and the company doesn't have to. So they're saving money by doing this. And I don't know if it'll return to offices as normal. The one thing that is true, though, it is very tiring to be on video meetings all day long. And so getting a sit-stand desk for your work environment is really nice. Some people have treadmills. It's a good idea maybe to power your laptop with a treadmill. I don't know. I don't think I could keep up. I'd have a heart attack. But it is different. But the beauty of it is you can be at home, you can take care of your pets, and you can have snack foods that aren't right out of the vending machine. So there may not be always a disadvantage to having COVID-19 push us out to remote workforce. And the other thing I'll add is it's made the market more competitive, because now I can live in Tennessee and have a mansion of a home for $400,000 that I could not even find as a shack in Seattle, and be able to work from there for the same salary. And that's a huge advantage. So we have people living in Texas and Oregon. All they have to have is reasonable internet and cell phone coverage, and they're able to work in IT.
My company is 100% has closed every single office from COVID. We're headquartered in downtown San Francisco and Silicon Valley and Sunnyvale, as well as our other large office in Boston and Cambridge. And we just, nobody goes into any office. We do not have anyone in any office anywhere. And most of everyone we're working with on the technology companies, nobody is anywhere. So Len's absolutely right about having that mentality. There's also that point about where you live sometimes may not matter now. Companies are figuring this out. They really are trying to figure this out. One of my big parts of my job is traveling. I typically travel, anywhere about 150 days a year. So this is very different to also make all that work happen where there is no shared whiteboard, but you still have to have shared whiteboard sessions. You still have to do that. So that clarity of getting your point across and trying different mediums to do that. Take that hour and write that paper, because you're not going to be able to get that feeling back and forth. Ask people to turn on their cameras, because you might be talking about something and you're looking for feedback, and all you've got is a black screen in front of you, and you don't know if you've even made a connection with them. So you're going to have to be more inquisitive. You're also going to have to be a little more vulnerable. Hey, did what I say just make sense? I'm sorry, you don't have your screen on. I can't tell by your reaction. These are very important items it's a different way of getting consensus. And it also sometimes for some people, they have to figure out how to balance it because there is no commute to kind of decompress your job or decompress the pieces. And I have to tell you, there is a mental anguish in the COVID piece. There's, to Len's point, a lot of positives for where people are having different pieces, but then there's also kind of if you've been on a team and you suddenly, you know, connect with your team a half hour a day when you used to always go to the water cooler and talk about everything. It's a real different way to think about how you're doing your business, but you've got to have clarity of thought and you got to take some more time to organize, and communication is just so much more important.
Hey, Meredith, I think we had a couple questions about in there in the thread about master's program and qualification for employment. Like it looked like the gist of the questions were how important is a master's in terms of, you know, getting into industry and then a couple years experience, you know, how do you weigh those things? What would you three say on the panel about master's degrees in general for the industries that you're in? What's your sort of feel on that, if you wouldn't mind
So
sharing?
Alex's question about administrative management masters, I wouldn't be able to speak to that one, but as far as cybersecurity and IT, we don't consider at our facility a master's degree to be overqualified. Again, you know, we probably a PhD might be overkill, which is why I don't put it on my resume that I studied for a PhD, because they say, oh, you only did one thing really well your whole life, and that's not what I wanted to be. I wanted to be somebody who was a little more broad. And so I think from a cybersecurity or an IT perspective, a master's degree doesn't make somebody overqualified. In fact, in some areas, it might be very advantageous. It is nice, though, to have somebody with a computer background and a business degree so that they know the business well and can translate business speak into IT and vice versa. That's a very good translation.
I think it comes down to, I agree with Len on some of those areas, but if you are, you know, looking, it depends on the company. Some companies are collecting people with master's degrees, and there is kind of that, you know, kind of diploma designation that gives people jobs. And it can sometimes also warrant you to get a little bit more salary, especially not just maybe just a master's in an area, but definitely in MBA programs and something. So to Len's point about some of those, you know, greater areas, it can give you different pieces of that knowledge. But I would say if you have a master's degree and you got nothing else, you're just going to have maybe too much of an egg in one basket. Do a master's degree, but also try to intern, try and write papers, have some stuff. You can have just the degree, but make sure you got something else, because you might only be book smart, and then the company's thinking they got to teach you how to write an email, how to write a proof of concept paper, things like that, you know, that maybe you've never done before.
All good points. In hiring, a lot of the corporations have a requirement that you have a bachelor's degree, and HR has to sign off if you don't. So it's very important to have a bachelor's degree. Beyond that, it gets fuzzier. As the other panelists said, if your job that you're applying for requires a very specialized set of skills and your master's confers it to you, then you have an advantage in terms of being a candidate. But subsequently, once you are inside an organization, after a couple of years, it really doesn't matter whether you had a master's degree or an advanced degree. What starts mattering a lot more is your contribution, how you pull your weight on various projects, what team members think about it. So I wouldn't worry too much coming in about whether you're overqualified or underqualified. I would think it more in terms of, you know, your own personal narrative. What did you get out of it? So you got a bachelor's degree. Subsequently, what was it that got you interested in a master's program? And what satisfaction and particular knowledge and insights you gained from it? You need to carry that forward and bring it to the various projects you are in. And I'll actually just pivot a little bit and reply to the question about How do you start a conversation with a professional? I know many of you addressed it, but I'll be specific about it. Early in my career, I used to be intimidated by senior managers or professionals because I thought I really had to ask them very clever questions. And it turns out that's not the case. The first question that I expect people to ask me is, so how did you set out on this journey? What surprises did you encounter? What did you learn? What mistakes did you make? And those open-ended questions are what create a connection. And you have to remember to ask them. Don't just treat the other person as some abstraction sitting on an idol. They are not. They started just like you. They had a beginning, they have a middle, and they have come to a certain point in their career. And the more curiosity you express about it, the better the connection with them.
I even started a conversation once with a professional that I noticed they had a Seahawks lanyard, and I just said, "Oh, are you a football fan?" And that's how the conversation started. It didn't have anything to do with work, and the conversation went on from there, and was rewarding to find out more about what the person was and what they did.
On the just going back to the master's degree program for the persons that are asking those questions. One thing I would also say is if you think you want to go for a master's, you could also look for a company where maybe it may not be, it might be a bigger company, maybe exactly what you want, maybe not exactly what you want, but maybe have them pay for your master's. There's a lot of companies with tuition reimbursement programs. And that way you're getting a knowledge and you're getting that point, and you also have a great pathway by which to test your concepts or something. Maybe go in a little bit, don't wait for the most absolutely perfect job in cybersecurity. Maybe take that entry level starting point with cybersecurity. But if you also know you're going to get exposure to a lot of areas, you could go through. There's a lot of your one choice is not your only choice. We have all had many jobs and careers and different things, and you can evolve a lot. So put those pieces together. On the networking piece, LinkedIn is a great way to find out something about people that you're connecting with. Read some of their stuff. But if you come off as, if you're just doing it to kind of be disingenuous, it is really see-through to a lot of people. So only ask about the things you really do care about. Don't try, be your true authentic self. Because remember, again, you're going to get hired by somebody then that you are not authentic with. And you're probably not going to be very happy after a period of time, or maybe you'll just, settle. And what kind of life is that? So, go for those pieces.
So Daniel, your question about tuition reimbursement, it's very hard to find that out until you peel open the benefits package from an HR or a human potential team. Oftentimes that's word of mouth. I knew that the last two companies had a tuition that I worked for had a tuition reimbursement program. I didn't need to use it, but I found out through friends, because almost nobody puts a newspaper ad said, "Oh, and by the way, we'll buy you a master's degree," because it's just a little more beyond just a normal interview question.
I know some companies also have a specific timeline that you have to work after they pay for your master's degree. So sometimes you tie in to sort of a commitment for a certain amount of time.
Yeah,
not just corporations, but military as well. I mean, a lot of people go into military to have a lot of their schooling paid for too.
Yeah, we had to stay on at the last two companies 2 years past the graduation date, or you paid back all of the tuition. So you had to be ready to stick with it.
Yeah, be committed to that organization. Well, we are running into the last couple minutes, but I'm going to give the reward to the bold. So the very last question goes to a student that doesn't mind asking it on camera.
As far as to go in the complete opposite direction of the master's degree question, I'm pre-bachelor's, and I feel I have a significant level of soft skills and office administrative skills, and I read about cybersecurity for fun. But as far as just even very entry-level IT positions that I've tried to apply for, a little overzealously perhaps, but it just seems like the bachelor's is a very large barrier, and you can't really sell the soft skills over a resume, I guess. So it's really hard to get in the door at all. Being a little bit older as well, you know, I have the job experiences in various industries, but it's just something that, like, maybe I'm wasting my time trying to apply before a bachelor's. Even if it says AA on the job ad, you're probably competing against numerous, at least bachelor level. But I don't know. I guess my question is really just, should I just wait?
At our organization, if it says AA, you have to have had the AA. If it says bachelor's, you need the bachelor's. However, we do take interns. We aren't accepting them right now because of FTE counts. They count against us. But an intern, we will take at any time. Usually it's second year. So I would look for internships to get your foot in the door, because a lot of companies will allow an internship as credit for a degree or credit for work effort at their organization.
I would also add, Merrill, that, or maybe it's Jeffrey Merrill, sorry.
No, you had it right.
Okay, so I would just add that I think when people look for jobs, they look for absolute matches. Like, I don't have that title in my background, so therefore I cannot apply for that job. And I would just say, be a little thoughtful, be a little expansive in your capabilities. You know, I've had people who I hired on in a customer service role that worked at a Safeway, or they worked as an airline ticket counter person. Trust me, those people have some of the toughest customer service jobs that you could ever imagine. And they aren't called customer service. They were called ticket counter, or they're called box boy, or whatever it might be that it is, you know, or, you know, stocking of shelves. You need to look at your skills and what you learned and be able to strip the label off of it and see what you actually have done. Take the practicality of it and lose the label a little bit, and make sure you bring that forward. I can tell you, every person who I've helped place a job with or do that, as soon as we got them to think about this differently, they excelled at that job because they really had that bit. So also think about, if you are really strong in the soft skills, don't hide from that. There's a lot of technology jobs and soft skills. If you're a product manager building a new product and you don't know how to read market share, TAM, TOM, SOM, you know, kind of market capabilities, things like that, or relevancy of what a product can do and to bring benefit or our returns on investments to company or something, you don't have that business side, it's pretty difficult. So don't always think about the technology. Think about all those pieces that can come there. Like Len said, I think you mentioned, Len, that if you can find somebody with the great soft skills, you'll teach them, because every corporation has a little bit of technology that has to be learned specifically to them and their business. And so there is always going to be some kind of training. And we're not talking about you guys going into these, you know, highly directive upper management jobs, you know, and do not feel less by starting entry level. That is a great way to learn. I mean, it is how everybody has to kind of do their chops or pay their time. It's very few people that get to jump the ladder.
Great. Well, I want to be respectful of all of your time, and just thank you to our panelists, Judy, Len, and Aloke, for just sharing all your knowledge and information with us. So I also want to share a lot of things that you've talked about and gave advice to students, is that, you know, there's help at the college for that. You know, Career Services, we can help you come up with elevator speeches, what Len talked about, you know, creating LinkedIn portfolios, and also just figuring out, how do you talk to employers about your soft skills? You know, those are things that it's great to sit down with somebody and talk about. It's one thing to just send me your resume. Well, I don't know you. I don't know about that difficult job you had at Safeway with customer service, but, you know, having an actual appointment really helps me work through those things with you. So.
And I would just add, Meredith, I've been on this call and I'm looking at my LinkedIn and not a single invite from anybody here. So get courageous, people.
Yeah.
Start your network now. There's
So
no
what I would say, yeah, like even just going to the advisory panel meetings, I noticed by the end of them, I always have at least 3 LinkedIn invitations waiting for me. So because that's what you professionals do. You're linking to people, you're connecting, learning about them, figuring out what they do. So yeah, well, that's a great invite, Judy. Thank you. Well, thank you so much to the panelists. Any last words, Luke, that you think of or that you have to know?
I just appreciate the attendance and the opportunity, and thanks for the forum to let me express my views on the workplace, because I think sharing this kind of information is very helpful both directions.
Thanks, Glenn.
I look forward to working for all of you, as you all will probably be my bosses someday. Big challenge out there. Come on, guys, make it happen.
I'd like to appreciate everyone. I have 2 teenage kids at home, and I appreciate all of you listening to me.
Well, thank you and have a great night.
Thanks.
Thank you.